I feel like I have a big topic of discussion to get into, which is related to this piece I just put out. 20 Simple Truths about America. I want to talk about that. Actually, like what I want to talk about isn't so much like the truths that I put out there, but like the fact that they are simple. I think that's the more profound piece of this. Um, um, yeah. So, I mean, where I would start on this is observing this condition that we find ourselves in as a society. I've talked about the epistemic crisis. You've heard me talk about this. For those who are new to this concept, I will recap it for you in some summary form here right now. Epistemics is really about it's about like knowledge and communication. It's a sort of a central field of philosophical inquiry, something which I'm very interested in my work and think about a lot. And so when we say there's an epistemic crisis, what we mean is that people don't live in the same realities. Um, of understanding, right? They don't believe in the same truths. They don't like I mean, like an example of sort of this of an epistemic uh rupture would be say like the flat earthers, for example, right? If they are unable to believe that the earth is a oblate spheroid, which is what it is, um in the most precise scientific terms. um and they refuse all evidence as forgery when you try to argue with them that that it is the case that the Earth is an oblate spheroid. That's like an epistemic rupture. That's like a situation from which they look at a picture of the Earth from space, and what they see there is a either a computer generated or human artist forgery. um and like there's like at when you're sort of in that interpretive frame, it's not really possible to um win an argument with that, right? And we have an epistemic rupture like that today, right? At a more significant level in American society. A good third of the country, maybe a little less than a third. Um, and this might seem discongruous with incongruous. I mean, incongruous with like election results and polling data and stuff like that. But I'll clarify why there's a disparity between the figures of like Trump voters, Trump supporters, and people who I would sort of categorize as being in this different epistemic landscape. So a little less than a third, little more than a quarter of American society essentially believes an entire worldview that is self-contained in what you might call the MAGA media bubble. I mean, if you wanted to give it a name. Um, it is a it is a manufactured bubble by fascists in our society, that very much want to intentionally control the minds of the people who are hypnotized by this. I mean, and they have been through the effective use of propaganda programmed to believe that Donald Trump is in fact a somebody who represents absolute truth. So anything that goes against him is by definition corrupt or a lie. That is literally how somewhere between a quarter, maybe a little less than a third of your fellow Americans view the world. That is just true. I mean, and it's a scary fact. Um, so that's less than the people who voted for Trump, right? There were a lot of people who voted for Trump that know that he's a liar and know that most of that stuff is bullshit, but like thought that maybe actually, you know, 2016 to 2020 wasn't so bad before COVID. So like maybe he can get rid of this inflation shit. I'm not really paying attention to politics. I don't know what's going on, but like things were I mean, business was good when Trump was president. Like that's kind of like that's actually in the milieu. That's actually like representative of a lot of your American compatriots, right? In terms of how they view this stuff. And they kind of exist in the milieu between people like me, like, coastal elitists like me who like are, too enthralled by the sound of our own voice. And and the sort of like completely captured MAGA cult. Um, and we're competing for those people. I'm actively competing to influence those people to come to my side, and obviously the mega media machine is actively competing for those people to go to their side. And the mega media machine did a better job in 2024 um, than I did. Clearly, because we're in the middle of a constitutional crisis right now. So this is the epistemic crisis. This is the nature of the crisis that we're in. Um, And so, like, I mean, how do you fight back against this? How do you fight back in a world where a significant number of your fellow citizens are in this interpretive frame for which, like, no real argument has any chance at succeeding at changing one's mind? Well, I mean, here's the bad news. The bad news is you can't convince them. The good news is you don't have to. So when we look across the sort of field of your fellow citizens, you can see that there are a great number of people who are readily convincible. We can, we can refer to them as the median voter, the sort of politically disengaged voter, these sorts of people who really don't actually follow all of these narratives. They are available to us as persuadable voters or as persuadable citizens. They can be politically activated. Those options are, in fact, available to us. Um, and so the question is not how do we convince MAGA voters? That is actually the wrong question. The MAGA cults, I mean, these people are going to be a problem for America for a very long time because they have been indoctrinated into a cult. I mean, they have been completely brainwashed as people. Now, luckily, they're about somewhere between 25% and a third of your fellow citizenry. These people are psychologically compromised by the propaganda machine that they live inside. We just have to say it. That is true. That will be considered controversial, and somebody will use me saying this against me in the future. But I mean, it is just the truth. But it's not all Trump voters, luckily. It's not all Republican voters, luckily. There is about 60, maybe getting up to 70% of the country that we can work with. Like so like that's the good news. That's the good news, right? But the bad news also is that we're doing a really bad job on the opposition side to Trump. We're not doing the best job at working with that 60 to 70% of the American polity, which is workable to us. So we need to like reframe our political strategy and our moral strategy and our epistemic strategy to recognize that we have that 60 to 70% to work with. And we need to like take it for what it is and be very mature about like how to work with it. Because we're not going to convince people who are in a cult. Like by definition, we cannot do that's what being in a cult is. These people are unconvincible. So you have to cut your losses there. Just cut your losses. Um, I'm never I if people come to me and they're like, "Mike, you're really good at debating and arguing. I have this like family member who thinks Donald Trump is like literally Jesus on earth. How can I convince him?" I say, "Don't. Don't try to convince them. Just try to enjoy. I mean, if they're your family member, just try to enjoy other things around that. Have fun at the barbecue, talk about the baseball game. Like, do not, I mean, like this is a fruitless endeavor. Like once you are that brainwashed, it's like I mean you're talking like years of like deprogramming therapy at that point. Like, I mean, it's bad. It's bad. It's sad. Um, I pity these people. Like, I mean, uh, so I mean, like, I'm sorry. Like, that's what this media machine has done. And that's a moral crime, actually. Like, I mean, in a sense, like Rupert Murdoch is like he's evil. He's evil. He has done this to people. And it's a kind of psychological abuse, if you ask me. When you think about it in those terms, that he has essentially destroyed these people's minds, turned them against humanity, turned them against their own humanity. I mean, that seems like a pretty defensible definition of evil to me. I'll leave that there. Um, so moving on to the 20 truths, simple truths about America. Um, yeah, I mean, I wrote these out because this is like what's going to be going on now, right? In the political landscape. The Supreme Court and various courts have ruled against the administration on matters of law, and have made orders. Engage. They have brought down things known as temporary restraining orders. These are temporary measures that courts can put in place to stop parties to a lawsuit, or a matter before the court, or any other matter before the court, criminal or otherwise, um, from doing a thing that the court believes could lead to more damages relevant to the case. So, um, the court will apply a balance of equities test, when something is before it. When it, for example, um, you sue, like, for example, you sue the court and say, well, the government is illegally deporting people from the United States in contravention of due process rights under, Article 4 and 5 of the U.S. Constitution. And so the court looks at this, and obviously, it takes time to have a trial, right? Like you have to get a jury, and you have to bring lawyers in. That takes like months, right? So, but and so like when you have things that are moving fast, the courts obviously understand that you can't wait for trials, so you get these um pretrial movements, injunctions and restraining orders that get put in place if the court is sufficiently concerned that the matter before it appears to be something of like pressing, yeah, a pressing legal concern, right? So in the case of, say, seeking a restraining order against the government, a party which has standing before the court will ask the court to say, we think the government is doing something illegal and unconstitutional. This is what it is. Here's a basic set of facts that we will present to you. Here are these immigrants being removed from our country without due process rights. Court, I mean, I am sure you are aware of the Fourth and Fifth Amendment in the United States. And so this is obviously, I think, just like, just if we're just talking about it right now, this might be something that you and me as the party was standing, And in a conversation with the court, you might think that maybe this is something that the judge in this case you might be concerned with. So I am asking you, given that this is going on and this seems irregular, right, on its face, I think you might agree, Judge, that on the balance of equities, we might ask the government to stop doing this until the court can get its head around what is actually happening. That is what a temporary restraining order is for. Um, and so that, and we've seen that happening. And that is a completely reasonable and legitimate thing for the courts to do. It is their role. When the courts do that, the government must comply. The Article 3 branch of the of the U.S. constitutional order is responsible for making judgments on matters of law. And when they make judgments on matters of law, those things become the law. It's tautological. There is no place in the Constitution for the executive branch, the president, to basically consult with his lawyers and say, "Well, actually, I disagree with what the Supreme Court said." No, that's not how it works. The Supreme Court's ruling is final. It is the judgment. They are the judges. They have passed judgment. Like I mean, the law is the law has been clarified. The court has now said this is what the law means. Now follow it. That is what like that is what a judgment is, right, in our constitutional system. So all of this talk, I had this like back and forth with like some like conservative editorialist a few weeks ago, which was like just absolute nonsense. Like basically arguing for situations like when like the president might be justified in ignoring the Supreme Court. Like, what the fuck are you talking? It's like Dan McLaughlin. Like, who the fuck is this guy? Um, and so like I mean like this is just absurd, right? Like, could you imagine the founders like when they were sitting around drafting the Constitution, like if like someone were coming up with hypotheticals like this in front of them and being like, well, what guys, think about this right now. um so, like, what happens if, say, you have a president illegally seizing control of, like, of independent agencies, violating congressional statutes, right, left, and center, and then the courts come along and tell the president to stop, and then the president doesn't stop and tells people in the executive branch not to stop, and a bunch of like conservative judicial theorists show up and say, well, actually, this is a really complicated matter because technically there's a unified executive. And like technically, like if there's a unified executive, then don't the officers have to follow the court's orders? And like, doesn't that like make it hard to determine whether they should listen to the court or the executive branch? I mean, Thomas Jefferson would be like, I need to cut you off right now. I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Like, obviously, in that situation, um, um, when the court tells the fucking officer of the executive branch to do something, they must do it. I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Like, I mean, this is like how insane the unitary executive theory is. Like, the founders would just be like completely beside themselves, like thinking that this was some sort of like really complicated, nuanced matter. Like it's like I mean, like this is one of the greatest lies of like conservative jurisprudence over the last like 30, 40 years that really started like after Watergate. Like, which is just this like mystic for fucking originalist bullshit that is like a projection of what they think the founders thought, right? For many of their thoughts they seem to have absolutely no appreciation for, as evidenced by these like insane like proceduralist arguments that they claim are built in fidelity to original intent and textualist doctrine. It's bullshit. Anyways, the president cannot defy the Supreme Court. Um, so I think I covered that. Officers of the executive branch must obey court orders. So, um, if the Supreme Court orders a U.S. Marshal, if say you have an order comes from the Supreme Court, a 9-0 ruling from the Supreme Court, Clear as day. It doesn't matter actually. If it's a 5-4 ruling, it's valid. If it's a majority, it's a ruling. It doesn't actually, like, the dissent doesn't have any bearing on the legality of it, just to be clear. So we have a final ruling from the Supreme Court that basically says US Marshal Service, go arrest this administration official and bring them before this court. Um and so the US Marshal Service is like, yes, yes, justices. And then Pam Bondi shows up and says, the president is ordering you to stand down. And if you do not, I will dismiss you for insubordination. Um, this is not a confusing issue. The fascists and many conservative legal theorists will tell you that the U.S. Marshal now faces a conundrum of sorts here. That there is no dual loyalty here. They don't have to choose. Their loyalty is to law and the Constitution. The Constitution says that they have to obey the Supreme Court in this situation. The Supreme Court has told them that they told them to do something that, and any act that the president or anyone in the chain of command of the president, including the attorney general, who takes action to impede or stand in the way of the enforcement of that order by an officer deputized by the court, is acting in contempt of that court. Like, it is an illegal order by definition. Like, it is not it like conservative legal theorists might argue that there still exists a sort of like ability to terminate for convenience or for other cause unrelated to the enforcement action in that sort of like narrow window. But like that is like the most like legal bullshit skullduggery like that you could ever fucking try to argue. And I understand that a lot of conservatives, like legal theorists, will like die on that fucking hill, but it's because they're evil fascists. Like, only an evil fascist would argue that. Um like, that's, I mean, that's just like the fucking truth, right? Like, just like it's just thinking about it intuitively, like, why would it be like an equitable concern to the court that, like, in the 1 hour it takes the US Marshal who has been ordered and deputized by the Supreme Court to go effectuate an arrest, that the administration, on a completely unrelated matter, realizes that they have a reason, a causal reason, to dismiss that marshal just in time before they can do it. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? This is why, like, you must assume that these unitary executive theorists are fascists. Because this is like the legal bullshit that they're trying to like sneak in here. No, if the US Marshal is ordered to do something by the Supreme Court, the US Marshal does that thing. The president cannot stop them. The end. Simple truth number 3. The president is required to faithfully execute the laws. Um, this is a truth. The president is required to do this. It is, in fact, if you have your pocket constitution ready, I would open it to Article 2, Section 3. Um, uh, so the president is required to faithfully execute the laws of the United States. Um, which we just determined are interpreted by the Supreme Court. So, when the Supreme Court says that this is what the law is, Mr. President, the president does not have space to disagree. Article 2, Section 3 says that he must faithfully execute the laws, which faithful, we would mean faithfully to the Constitution. The Constitution says the Supreme Court interprets the laws, therefore, the final determination of the Supreme Court is final. Therefore, it is not faithful for the president to attempt to second guess the Supreme Court. By definition, that would, by definition, by tautological logic, be unfaithful to the Constitution and be illegal. So, I mean, the president is required to faithfully execute the laws. This is very simple. This is how it works. Do not listen to conservative unitary executive theorists and some of these more radical motherfuckers from like the Heritage Foundation, or in some cases, like the like the Federalist Society. Like, not all of the people in the Federalist Society are like this fucking crazy. Just to be clear, it's a mixed bag, but like some of them are this fucking crazy. Do not listen to those people. Um, Number four, the three branches of government are co-equal. They check and balance each other. The executive is not superior. It is not the ruling branch. It is the enforcing branch. This is very important. This is very important. Um, a republic like ours has an executive. That is basically that basically what that means, like in its most basic philosophical sense, is that there is a process by which we make rules, which is the Congress, right? The congressional process, with representatives from the people who go there to make them. They make those laws. The executive has a check on that, in the form of the veto power, which is meant to sort of be, it's meant to slow down, like, populism, essentially. The reason why the founders wanted the president to have a veto power is if, say, like they were hoping they imagined that presidents would be wise and they would realize if 60 to 70% of their country was like trying to fucking lynch somebody, that they might in the Congress like pass the like kill Bob law, that the president would be like, guys, I need to veto this law. Everyone needs to calm down. Like that's kind of like what that's like kind of like what the founders were hoping the veto power would be used for, would be to like calm the tempers of the populist mob, right? And then even then, the founders were like, well, we can't let that could also be dangerous as well. The president can't just simply stomp on the will of the people either, which is why we have the veto override with a two-thirds congressional majority, right? And so the founders, they thought about this. They were like trying to like, this is why they did this. This was like the flow of like how they were trying to make politics work in America. I think it's pretty cool. I think we should try to get back to this and think about it in this way. Um, so yeah, back to the co-equal branch thing. And all of that was, I think, kind of important for like framing this discussion, right? Which is that like the Article 1, Article 2, and Article 3 branches don't get to dictate to each other their own, like within their prerogatives. They just don't, right? There's just a separation of powers, the end, right? If if the administration says like, no, like we actually have sort of this final determination of law. Like our lawyers will like we'll mostly go along with what you're saying, Supreme Court, but like we may like, we may put our own finishing touches on it. No, no, that's actually entering the Article 3. You can't do that. Not allowed. That is a separation of powers violation. And there's no You're not allowed. You're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to grab power from the other branch. Not allowed. Um, Anyways, the Constitution is not a suggestion. It's not a menu of options. It is binding law. All office holders swear an oath to uphold it. The oath means something. This is something like I'm really like frustrated with. Like, I don't think we take the fucking oath like seriously. I think we should prosecute office holders for oath violations more aggressively in this country, if you ask me. Fuck some of these like fucking office holders who like don't. I mean every oath I've ever fucking taken, I've meant seriously. Um, yeah, I mean the if we don't have the Constitution, if we're not going to revere the Constitution, even like if the Constitution compels us to do something that we don't want to do, we should be morally mature enough to know that we will do it anyways, right? If the Constitution inconveniences us, our attitude towards it is not like anger at the Constitution. It is the like mature, take a breath, realize that there are some things more important than me, like our collective society and our collective inheritance and freedom and democracy and the shared project we love. And so I comply because I'm an adult and a responsible citizen. Anyways, number 6, the separation of powers is not a technicality. I mean, I've already kind of gone over this. It's not a fucking technicality. Um, the executive branch has no business telling the Supreme Court what to fucking do, or Congress for that matter. And actually, we need to talk about this, right? Because Congress has a lot of power here, by the way. Congress could stop all of this today. Like, I mean, like if, you know, Mike Johnson and Minority Leader Jeffries got together and said, "Hey, we may not agree on all these things. We may not agree on healthcare. We may not agree on global warming. We may not agree, whatever the fuck, right? Like, let's put all this shit to the side. We both agree that Donald Trump is breaking the law, and we should stop him, and we should use our Article 1 prerogative to remove him from office as well as all of his other collaborators. We should do this like right now, and we should maybe like, I don't know, maybe we should be friends as Americans, and maybe like it's hard. I know that like we don't agree on things like trans rights and stuff like that, and that's really, I mean, we're really not going to see eye to eye on that right now, but like maybe like we should take a step back from the brink here. I mean, this could lead to nuclear war. So maybe there's like a space here that maybe, I don't know, like we could just use our Article 1 powers and stop all of this right now. Maybe save the world. Um just putting that out there. Number 7, no one is above the law. Um Nobody is above the law. It's like very simple. This is like a foundational principle to our republic. Um, these unitary executive theorists want to tell you that the president who is in office is temporarily above the law as an office hold, as he exists within this sort of protective sphere of the office. And this sort of tendency is why you got this atrocious Supreme Court decision last year around presidential immunity. It's a bullshit decision completely. I mean, we have to live with it. I mean, I have to be consistent here. It is the law of the land. um i I think that like in the future we should appoint new judges to the court who have more fidelity to the Constitution than some of these conservative justices who have decided surprisingly against the wishes, I mean, against the greatest fears of our founders to put the executive above the law in some cases. Um Anyways, John Roberts, you still have time to fix this, just so you know. There still is time. Number 8, the rule of law depends on enforcement. I mean, this is pretty simple. Um, I mean, this is just like, I mean, look, I mean, we like, you have to enforce the law. If you want to live in a fair society, like when people break the law, like we have to enforce constantly. We just have to. It's like we have to. Like it's and that means like, and by the way, as much as that means for some petty crime, like here in Los Angeles, it means the same thing for Elon Musk or Donald Trump. Like, you have to enforce the law. They commit crimes. We have to arrest them and subject them to the courts. Like they have. I mean, like it's not that. like I think we kind of get a little bit morally confused here when we say that like these kinds of people like never they never experience the consequences of law. And so we sort of say like, well, maybe we shouldn't enforce like shoplifting crimes so much in our cities, like because it's unfair for these people who are like poor and destitute and stuff. When like I get like the tendency to think that way, but maybe it should just be like, look, like we enforce the law. And that includes you billionaires. Like I mean, it's like I mean, there's like a far like more I think like robust way to stand here that doesn't like collapse into moral incoherence. Um, um, okay. Uh, where are we? Number 8. No, number 9. No. There is no such thing as a loyalty oath to an individual in a republic. Um, Loyalty is to the Constitution in this republic. That's what you're loyal to, right? Um, I mean, all of our loyalty oaths for for even for the office of the presidency itself are and in our armed services are to the Constitution. This is deliberate. It means that like illegal orders can be refused. In fact, they must be refused under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. If the president gives an illegal order, it is not a crisis for the military to determine what they ought to do. There is no overriding principle that that a commander in chief's order given is facially valid. That does not exist as a matter of military or constitutional law. In fact, the military is required by the Uniform Code of Military Justice to only carry out illegal orders, which means that there is a requirement of discernment. So if the president gives an illegal order, and any member of the military who carries out that illegal order has like potentially committed treason. So they are required to say no. They're required to say no, Mr. President, I will not carry out your illegal order. That is the truth. That is how it works. That is how it has always been understood. And if I had said that 20 years ago, like 95% of Americans would have agreed with me on that. Like the fact that that's not true anymore is crazy. Um, Number 10. Patriotism means defending your country from those who would rule it without constraint. Um, yes, love of your country is not love of power. If you love your country because you love its being led by the fact that if you love your this is actually really important. I want to like really because I mean I do have friends who are confused about how I'm so fucking patriotic and how much I love this country. Like even right now, like they just don't understand like why I'm not like ashamed to be an American. Because I don't because my love for this country has nothing to do with Donald Trump. It had nothing to do with Joe Biden. Had nothing to do with any of that. It was not bound up in like in that. It's bound up in the things I'm talking to you right now about. It's bound up in the principles, in the vision, in my shared citizenship with you. Like like other people. That is why I am patriotic. That is what my love of this country is. In fact, like I consider it very unpatriotic to to attach patriotism to idols like Donald Trump. That is unpatriotic as fuck. So and I think patriotism calls upon all of us to reject this and to fight for this country and to love it. So I do. Number 11. Constitutional crises are not metaphors. They are real and we are in one. I think that stands on its own. Number 12. A president who defies the courts is not controversial, he is unlawful. We must call this what it is, authoritarianism in real time. Donald Trump is defying the courts right now. He's breaking the law. He is an unlawful president. He's operating outside the boundaries of law. This is a simple truth. It's not a controversial one. It's not one which experts will disagree on the status of the lawfulness of the president's conduct. The courts have, I mean, the courts have already found probable cause for like criminal contempt. I mean, this is not debatable. This is not debatable. Um, Donald Trump is breaking the law. Simple truth. Number 13, a lie told with confidence is still a lie. Truth does not yield to spectacle. It must be asserted clearly and consistently. I mean, this is what Goebbels understood, right? The famous Nazi propagandist, right? Hitler obviously mentioned this in Mein Kampf as well, and so Hitler understood this, right? If you just repeat something over and over again, people will start, dumb people will start to believe it. Educated people can usually resist these things, which is why education is so important. And Thomas Jefferson knew that, and which why he realized that civic republicanism would depend on an educated populace, which is why he supported the public school system in the United States. Um, it's not surprising that reactionaries don't want there to be a public school system, or at least one that they don't ideologically control. Because fuck, if people think for themselves, it's obvious these people are full of shit, right? Um, so yeah, and can't, we can't like we just have to state simple truths and speak through these lies like with coherence. And call them lies like every single time. Do not let lies slide. Create friction for lies at the dinner table. Don't get into fights. Just create friction. If somebody says like, well, you know, like D- Doge has like found all of this like corruption. Like, don't you think like, if they didn't do, you say no, they didn't. They're like, what do you mean? You think it's like they didn't. It's fine. Just like It's like, let's talk about something else. Just create a little bit of fiction and then change the subject. Don't let lies stand. You can be artful in how you confront these lies in your life so they don't have to like tear your family apart or friendships apart, but create that friction. Don't let the lie stand. Number 14, political power does not confer moral legitimacy. You're hearing a lot of this from Silicon Valley executives and others who will say, yes, like maybe Doge is breaking the law and stuff like that, but Donald Trump was elected to do this. Don't you think that like we should like let him do this because like a majority of Americans voted for him, or at least a plurality in this case did? um no, that is the like our founders would like throw up in their fucking mouths if they heard someone say that. That's like it's like we don't like let like majority opinion is not an overriding consideration in a republic. Like for example, if 70% of the American public wanted to pass a law making it illegal to oppose Donald Trump tomorrow, too bad. It violates the First Amendment. This is why we have counter majoritarian institutions like the courts. Sometimes the majority doesn't win in a liberal democratic society. That's what the liberal part is. We don't let the majority oppress the minority. That's the whole point. The founders really understood this, and they were trying. That's the system they were trying to design for. So arguing that majority support is a superior defense to the rule of law in a republic is just it's just bullshit. Sorry, that's not how this works. We need to teach people this in school. This is like fucking civics 101 shit. Like if this is surprising to you, this is the first time you've like heard this. Like I don't know what the fuck is wrong with our education system. Um, Number 15. Uh, the president is not the government. It requires institutions, constraints, norms, and the courage to defend them. The president is not the government. Like he is a he's an executive. He's a caretaker. He's a custodian. Um, he's a servant of the people. Um, he is accountable to Congress. In Congress's like oversight roles. He is not like he is not he's not a king. We don't have an elected king in America. Um, yeah, he is not the personification of the government, like these fascists want us to believe that he is. Number 17, militarizing the executive branch is a precursor to tyranny. If federal agencies become political tools, democracy becomes theater. This is like actually like something we really think about right now. I mean, the fact that ICE, I mean, we just had another example, right, of ICE arresting a U.S. citizen, another U.S. citizen, like think like returning to America or something. Man, I could be wrong about this. Was like detained in like Miami and like almost ended up like deported or some shit. Like, I mean, they're just like using. Uh, they think they've identified some backdoor hatch in our constitutional due process rights. That if they are initiating contact with a individual on a matter of immigration enforcement, due process does not apply. So basically they're saying if they just assert that that the government um believes on balance of probabilities that the person that's standing in front of them is not a citizen, then they have a pretextual basis to like do an end run around the your due process rights. Like that's just you could just arrest anyone. Then you could just be like you could walk up to Jeff Bezos or you could walk up to like Warren Buffett and be like I we think you're not a citizen, so we're going to deport you. I mean, unfortunately, like you because we think you're not a citizen, you have no right to like actually like appeal that we're just going to have you on a plane to El Salvador. Like that's what that means. Like that's what they're fucking arguing. Like, I mean, like, if you, I mean, like, the fact that they're arguing about that with a straight face and they're actually operating in that way, and you don't think that this is a coup, like, this is an actual coup, and this is like the birth of an American Gestapo, I don't know what the fuck I can tell you. But you should be terrified by that. You should be, like, fucking mad. You should honestly be on the streets right now. But I understand people have jobs and it's hard. Um, Number 18. Checks and balances only work if people honor them. They are not self-executing, they depend on people choosing to uphold them. Yeah, I mean, this is just like I mean, if you're in the government or you're in a government agency, you're an FBI agent, you're a CIA officer or whatever, I mean, if like we expect you to say no. Like when you recognize that what is happening is like outside the regular procedures of law. If you do not, like you're committing treason. You just are. Sorry. Like when all is said and done, like, we'll we'll figure it out, but there might be trials, just so you know. Um, uh, Number 19, civic courage is not optional. Um, every generation must decide whether the American experience lives or dies. This is our test. I mean, this is our job. We are the people. We're the people. We're the fourth branch of government. And we have to act like it now. And 20, right, is obviously my little thing, right? The center must be held. Not because it's easy, but because it's ours to hold. It's ours. Our freedom, our truth, our dignity, it belongs to us. Therefore, we are morally virtuous in holding it and holding on to it and defending it against those who would take it from us. And we can hold our heads up high and feel like that is true because it is. And even our enemies know it's true and they hate us for it. So, um, that's That's what I have to say. Happy to take a few quick questions or comments to respond to um, before I wrap up in the next 10 minutes or so. If anybody wants to ask something. But those were my 20 simple truths. If no questions, I'm happy to also end and go back to reading and or writing something. All right. Going once, I'm twice. Oh, wait, oh, okay. What? Why constitutional crisis? Isn't it worse than that? Sally Gordon Moore. I mean, I mean, it is worse than that. I mean, it is a coup. I mean, it's a coup attempt. I'm very clear about this. But I mean, a coup is also a constitutional crisis. So I mean, it's yeah. I mean, um, implicitly, when Congress does not uphold basic principles like recognizing the right to a fair trial, aren't they guilty of treason? I mean, look, I mean, it depends on like how you define treason, right? I mean, there's statutory definitions of what treason are. Congress has kind of wide authority to determine what treason is, for example, as part of the impeachment clause. Um, I think there's like, I mean, I'm not an expert on the statutory legal theory behind treason, but how I define treason, right, is simply if you are sitting in an office of public trust, that you are an office, you're an officer of the government, and you've sworn an oath to defend and uphold the Constitution of the United States, and you knowingly act in contravention of that oath in service of a power that is not acting in fidelity with the Constitution, that seems like treason to me, right? Like a more like a morally, like in a very straightforward sense. Um, I mean, as it pertains to criminal law, um, I mean, there's like various different types of treason, like collaborating with like a foreign enemy, but I think collaborating with a domestic enemy who seeks overthrow of the Constitution, is also it's also treasonous. The fact that like um the people trying to overthrow the American Constitution are American citizens doesn't make collaborating with them not treasonous. Certainly that's not true. Um once one is acting with intention against the Constitution, they're committing sedition and treason, in my opinion, for what it's worth. Um, what is likely to happen now? Melanie asks. I mean, I expect what I mean. My base rate assumption is that the administration is going to, I mean, continue this standoff with the courts. I think that there's a lot of hope in the administration that they can get 5 votes on the Supreme Court for some concession to this unitary executive theory. Maybe not like fully, but like something which widens their berth. Um, I think Clarence Thomas and Alito are both pretty warm to unitary executive theory. The idea that like um, restraints on the president's ability to um, hire and fire employees of the civil service, for instance, at the whims of the president, which has been abrogated and abridged by the Pendleton Act and the Civil Service Reform Act. I think Alito and Thomas would strike those statutes down as unconstitutional and return us to the spoils system. You know, pre 1873. You know, back to the sort of President Garfield days. I mean, because these are crazy fucking old white, and in this case also an old black man who like has very weird um views of um the role of state power within the constitutional order. Um and seems willing to entertain a massive expansion of executive of unrestrained executive authority to operate government agencies and agents of the government with significantly less regulatory control and oversight by Congress, which is just it's fucking insane. So I expect that this standoff is going to occur, and there's going to be massive pressure that the administration tries to bring on the court to buy its bullshit theory as these cases actually get heard before the court, not just these interlocutory issues that we're currently talking about. Um, um, how do we have no accountability, no clear mechanisms? Stuart asks. I mean, the main reason is that Americans aren't sufficiently educated and engaged about their government and their public sphere. I mean, we just sort of, we're mad at how shitty our politicians are. We're like, why don't we have better politicians? Everyone's mad about this. It's like, well, I mean, like, we're what are you gonna do about it? Are you gonna run for office? What? I mean, like, where do you want these better politicians to come from? I do think there is this, like, I mean, I do have this sort of this disappointment with the average American who does that aren't taking responsibility for their fucking country. It's like it's like if you're mad that there aren't better politicians, then like work on electing better ones or run for office yourself, right? Like that has to be your attitude. Like this is why like why John F. Kennedy said in his inauguration speech, like ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. When I hear people saying like I don't like our politicians, like why is the country giving me bad politicians? It's like the country doesn't give you politicians. This is a system of self-government. Take some fucking responsibility, America. I'm sorry. Sometimes I mean it's like yeah, like we got to like deal with this coup that's in progress, but we also like need to like be a little bit harsh on ourselves a little bit and realize that like we've really dropped the fucking ball collectively. Anyways, nothing like a coup for a little moral awakening for Americans. Um, um, I might just take like one more. Um, your Circus Arena piece was so beautiful. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, like I really like I want to like write a fiction book at some point. You can probably tell that like I'm just sort of dying to write fiction. Um, but I mean, like I also think that like my experiment in like mytho poetry in the Grand Praxis series. I mean, I think there's something to the fact that um this sort of dry analytical style of philosophy that sort of pervades um the halls of academia like doesn't speak to the heart, that sometimes um like sometimes using narrative and story and sometimes even mythology. And I'm not trying to like convince anybody that what I'm saying is like actually literally true. It's self-aware mythology. We're admitting up front that this is just a mythological adventure into an imagined space. Um, but I think this is like what like movies and stuff like that, dramatic, movies that have moved us and brought us to tears and stuff like that. Like sometimes like understanding moral truths through through the backdrop of like narrative and mythology is like very useful for us as humans to think very clearly about like what it is that we truly believe. And so, um, I've had some people say it's like really weird. Like, why don't you just like explain the philosophy more straightforwardly? And I'm like, because I don't think that people are interested in that. I think people are they're trying to feel the people are trying to feel meaning again, and they're trying to connect these sort of principles. And I try to do this. I try to like bring the into like the if you read the Grand Praxis series, like the analytical philosophy is like in there, right? I mean, I kind of like go in and out of it, right, in these like registers and stuff, but I try to like build a sort of an emotional infrastructure around it so you can kind of feel that. And so I enjoyed, I enjoy that sort of little world that I have in my head where, I sort of play with morality in that circus tent. Um, and it's like a little place in my mind to sort of experiment and sort of think about like these sort of moral dilemmas that sort of like that doesn't exist in this absurdity that we're living in. If it's going, if it's going to be absurd, at least like let's have it. Why not some romance in the absurdism, right? Like so that's like so that's why I've sort of enjoyed like playing with that. Um, and I might do more of it. I might revisit the circus. I thought I was gonna leave it behind when I finished the 12, the 12 essays. But I might go back. I might write a whole book. I don't know. It's fun, and a lot of people have been emailing me and telling me they really like it. So maybe I'll assuming that the whole world doesn't end, maybe I'll get to do some more work on that. But with that, thank you everybody for those who joined live. Uh, I know this is supposed to be geopolitics week, but I think some things need to be said in this moment. And so here I am saying them. Signing off from very cloudy Los Angeles. Thanks, everybody.